Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the HQ Sportscast, your headquarters for all things sports. I'm Lucas Quick, joined by Niles Hall. And Niles, it's been a minute since we've last filmed. It's June 17th now. So there's a lot to cover up on. I think the first thing we got to talk about is the NBA Finals. It is officially a wrap. The New York Knicks have won their first title in over 50 years. And just overall, a pretty insane series. But just talk to me about how the last few games unraveled, because I think the last we filmed was before Game 3, I reckon.
Um, when they came back from 30, what was that, game five
Game
or game
4.
four? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was just one of the craziest basketball games I've ever watched. It's you're down 30 with what, like 5 minutes left in the third quarter, and you somehow get the win, and then the Spurs kind of had a meltdown, and then I feel like they kind of lost all momentum, and then I feel like all five of those games kind of played out similarly in the way they were won by the Knicks. The Spurs had the lead for a majority of the game, and then the Knicks came storming back in the fourth quarter. It was a great series. It was close the whole way. There wasn't any blowouts. It was a great series.
Yeah, and the first thing that you had mentioned on our script was about Victor Wembanyama's performance. So I'll pass that on towards you. What did you think about his performance specifically? Because I think people had high expectation, especially after they knocked off the Thunder. They were kind of like really high on the radar. And I think the Spurs and Wemby in general just let us down.
Yeah, not me. I like to troll people about Wimby. It's my thing because I feel like people announced him as the GOAT before he's actually done things, and I feel like there's a couple of things that he needs to clear up in his game and then clean up in his game. I feel like down the stretch of games, he's terrible. Almost he needs to get in the weight room. He doesn't have like a go-to move,
Yeah.
go-to shot offensively. Over off season, he needs to get in the weight room. And then overall, towards like the end of games, it's like on the defensive side of the ball, you're good, but in when it's win now mode, he's was the reason the Spurs couldn't get to the finish line in a couple of cases. Of course, their guards were inconsistent. Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox. We can talk about them, but when you're supposed to be the face of the franchise, um, I expect a bit more from you. What you've portrayed yourself to be. I feel like he just down the stretch of games, I feel like he wasn't present as much as he should have been.
No, I agree. I wrote Wemby's performance in one word, and I said underwhelming, because I think if we go back to what was either our first ever episode or second, I think it was our first, I was really high on Wemby on this matchup because after beating OKC, I thought they were the more physical team defensively. I thought this would be an easier step for Wemby than maybe have a really good finals performance, even if they didn't win. But he let me down big time. And looking back at it and seeing the matchups, it doesn't surprise me as much. I think you mentioned like he needs to hit the weight room. He's so skinny, and I know that we've seen that. It's kind of the new thing the NBA is having like 7'3" guys who are not really strong whatsoever. But when Wemby was up against Cat, there was no way he was going to beat Cat, especially in the paint. He's just so
Yeah,
much lighter than he is. I really said that, like, if you look at the stat sheet, Wemby didn't look that bad. But considering on how dominant of a level people think he can be, and people talking about him being in GOAT status after beating OKC, I really thought Game 3 was really the only game of the series where he really stepped up and helped the Spurs
hmm
win. If you look at Game 2, he had a good stat line, but he also single-handedly cost them
yeah,
that game, the last two possessions. So he's 22 years old. He still lacks that experience,
yeah,
in my opinion. I'm not trying to take away his accolades because he did play in the gold medal game in the Olympics last time or whenever it was. I think it was 24, if I'm not
yeah. The
mistaken.
2024
So
Olympics.
24 Olympics, and he's played in Europe, so he has a lot of experience.
Yeah,
But I think he hasn't played at this magnitude because I think the Knicks being in the finals set the bar a lot higher for this series than a lot of previous finals matchups, just because it was the Knicks. So I felt like there was a lot more pressure on the Spurs versus other teams, just because people in New York have been waiting for such a long time for this moment to happen to them. So I really think that maybe that pressure was a little too much for them. And just the Spurs as a collective team, they were just so young. I could go on about them. It was catastrophic. It was so catastrophic the way how that whole series unraveled. It's insane.
yeah. You can talk about the Spurs questionable coaching decisions. You can talk about their guards. You can talk about the depth seeming, that was there all season long, seeming to like just crumble away. Um, I feel like the Spurs. I've been saying, and I feel like I said this last couple of episodes. We talked about this. It's the Spurs need to find a veteran wing. Harrison Barnes is not going to cut it for them no more. He's a good vet, but I feel like you need to go get guys that are helping the team in the finals, because I feel like in the rotation they weren't able to go to like a veteran guy. Their vet is Keldon Johnson, which he's been in the league for like 3-4 years.
No, yeah, I agree. I think the guard play outside of, I think the guard play was like the biggest or second biggest reason behind the Spurs loss in the series. De'Aaron Fox was just so bad in the last two games, especially. I think that he was the biggest letdown for me, just because I thought he was kind of that veteran presence on the Spurs. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like he hadn't really been in the playoffs before outside of one series with the Kings back in 2023. So I really thought that he would maybe take on that leadership role and have a better role, but we were so wrong about that. He was awful the last two games. And I think that also goes with coaching, because Mitch Johnson never put Dylan Harper in the starting lineup. And that is
Yep.
still beyond me to this day, is how Fox still managed to get more minutes than Dylan Harper the last game. And I wrote this down, which blew my mind. Castle and Fox, let me see. De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, game 5, combined shot 4 of 25. And Stephon Castle did not make a field goal until the last minute of the fourth quarter, which was just insane
Mm-hmm.
for me to think about. And I think it sounds kind of crazy. I think Mitch Johnson's seat right now as a coach is slightly warm. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
he's going to get fired. But when you have a coaching performance like that in a span of 5 games, when you had double-digit leads in the second half for 3 games and lost all 3 games, I think that just speaks for itself that maybe Mitch Johnson, he also lacks experience. He's not Pop. But I'm sorry, but if you have a coaching experience like that for even 5 games, I don't know. I have my doubts moving forward with Mitch Johnson and how he's going to carry himself as a head coach and a leader moving forward.
Yeah, Mitch Johnson to me is. I've been saying I've been critical of him for a couple series now. I feel like he struggles, scoring the ball. He'll call a timeout, but he doesn't. Oftentimes, he'll just drop some, bullshit. And I feel like, his personnel decisions have been questionable. I think he plays Wimby well. I feel like him, splitting time with who's their backup,
Luke Cornett.
Luke Cornett. Yeah, they split time very well, but then at
Mm-hmm.
times it's the guard rotation. I feel like that's what kind of lost them their series. Um and with them, not performing as up to their expectations, because I feel like that went into it. But their guards were just the rotation
Terrible.
is I don't know. They were playing good all season, and I can but they played good last series. But Fox still coming back. He had an ankle injury earlier in that OKC series, but coming back in those last couple of games, he still was non-existent. And I feel like Mitch Johnson should have had a backup plan for what if Fox doesn't perform. But as a coach does, and coaches speak, is more of like, hey, like what he did in game 4 after he forgot to dribble the ball out. Which you're a point guard, you should know how to dribble the ball out and not go up for a layup when you're already up and you already had the lead with 10 seconds left. That was besides me. But he is De'Aaron Fox. I don't know. As in the Kings, I feel like he's lost some of his swagger. And what do you think is
Mm-hmm.
next for De'Aaron Fox?
I think, I don't know. It's really unfortunate because Fox has not been awful all season long. He was pretty good with the Spurs. He was a great fit when they traded for him. I love the trade from 2 years ago, I think. I think people are going to jump up the gun too quickly in terms of like, oh, they should ship him
Mm.
away. If they want to, I think it's going to be
I,
damn near impossible because his contract is so big and expensive. But it's difficult as a player because you might have a really, really bad performance in one series, and people will only look at that upon you for anything else. They won't look at anything from the past. So I think people are doing that right now for De'Aaron Fox, and I don't blame them for doing so.
yeah, the recency
But I
bias
don't know.
is crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's crazy recency bias, but I wouldn't move on from him. He still plays a
I,
great role with the Spurs,
I,
but they're
I
missing a piece.
I say they lucked out. They traded for Fox too early because remember
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have Dylan Harper yet. They lucked out in the lottery and got Dylan Harper, and then that they traded for him too early. I say if you're gonna trade De'Aaron Fox, it has to be for the right guy. I feel like you need to
Mhm.
get some assets back and like a veteran player back. But I don't know what's De'Aaron Fox is kind of the I don't know how to say this, but I just think it's hard as a player. You play your whole life to get to this moment, and then I feel like it's hard for him. His confidence might be shot from it. That's what I'm worried
Mhm.
about in this game. It's how do you come back from this? Like Ben Simmons, we saw it with him. He lost his confidence in a big game.
No, I agree. I think it's definitely something to consider about and something that people don't really consider about as well. I think the Spurs are in a really weird spot because I think they are a couple missing pieces away from being a team to win a championship. I think that they're still really, really, really young, which is going to be good for them in the next decade plus. But if they want to win a chip now, they need to get a veteran guy, and it can even be Giannis. Like as insane as that sounds, they
Mm-hmm.
need someone like I think the Rockets are a good example, even though they didn't get past the Lakers in the first round. They were a 2 seed last year, lost to the Warriors in the first round. They lacked that experience. So what did they do? They went out of their way and traded for Kevin Durant. I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs maybe did something similar to that this offseason or maybe in the next two. Because yeah, Wemby's 22. Harper is a fantastic rookie. Stephon Castle's in like year two. So they have a bright future ahead of us. But obviously, they just made it to the finals now, so might as well go and try to win a championship at this moment too. You have the future to look upon, but you also have a great team now. So I'm very curious what they're going to do with that.
But the thing is, we're in the parity era of the NBA. It's hard to get back to where you are,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting to see like teams like that are supposed to be dynasties like OKC, the Spurs. But we're in the parity era. It's hard to get back to winning a championship.
Yeah, I think it's even harder to do so after having the experience they had in the championship. The fact that they led for I think over 70% of that
Yep.
series, if I'm not mistaken, which is just so crazy to think about because they lost in 5 games. It doesn't really indicate how the Spurs dominated for most of the series, if I'm being honest. The Knicks were still the better team, obviously, but not for all 4 quarters. So I just think that because of how poorly coached it was, how many times they choked, it this is a huge test for the team. Considering how young they are, how are these guys gonna adjust from this? Are they gonna come back really strong next
Mm-hmm.
year, or they're gonna hit a wall and they're just gonna fall apart? I think they'll be okay just because they're so young. Dylan Harper was superb in the postseason. I'm still like I could go on about Harper because he's a rookie. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever seen a rookie
He.
step up like that in the finals and that big of a stage before.
I think he's the only one that exceeded
Mm-hmm.
expectations
Absolutely.
for the Spurs. But what do you think about the Knicks side? What does this win mean for the city of New York and that team also?
I think I think the Knicks, man. I'm trying to. It's hard. It's hard to explain because it was such a special team. I think if you look at the 2020s, I really, really think that there's a strong case that this is the most memorable and iconic team of the 2020s. People are saying they're
Mm-hmm.
the best team. I don't agree with that as dominant as they were in the postseason, but they were resilient. That like it was so impressive to see from the first game to the last game how many times they stepped up in clutch moments, came back from being down in the fourth quarter, and everyone had each other's backs. They had incredible team chemistry, and I think the front office deserves a huge pat on the back because we've never really seen having 3 college teammates on the same basketball team. And when they got Mikal Bridges a few years ago, and as much as they got rid of, I think it was like what 5 first round picks for Bridges, which seemed really obscure at the time, and I still think it is to this day. But it's so brilliant because they had Dante that time too. You have 4 guys who
Mm-hmm.
played at college together, and now they're on the same team, the NBA, and it just really boosts that team chemistry to another level and everyone stepped up. There was always one guy or 2 guys or 3 guys that had a
Yeah.
good role or an important, impactful role in the finals, especially because Brunson won Finals MVP. He solidified it in Game Five as one of the most fantastic performances I've seen in a minute. But you had OG step up numerous times. I think Jose Alvarado doesn't get enough credit for the
Yeah.
Game Four comeback. He was so good
Mm-hmm.
in the back half of that game. Karl Anthony Towns had some really good games. Mikal Bridges. There was not a single
OG and
moment
Anobi.
yeah, OG was amazing. OG was my
Mm-hmm.
finals MVP after that play he
Yeah.
had in game 4.
Yeah.
Like that was insane. I don't think for the rest of my life I'll get over that play he made, and I don't think
Yeah.
people are realizing that's like one of the most impressive plays in NBA history, in my opinion. Like, I wish I know you wanted to film like right afterwards.
No,
That
yeah,
game because
I texted Lucas.
it
We got
was
to film, bro, because that game was one of the best basketball games I've
it
ever
was
seen,
insane.
bro.
I'm kind of glad that we didn't because I was so in the heat of things. I didn't watch most of that game, to be honest. I was hanging out with my friend in Livermore, and we had dinner, and I think we got left the place at the end of the third quarter, and we found a bar like across the street. And she's a huge baseball fan and football fan, but she's never really watched a minute of basketball in her
Mhm.
life. And we watched the fourth quarter of Game 4, and it was just an insane vibe,
Yeah,
and I just could not get over it because it was history. Like we're both reporters, but we're also
yeah,
fans at the same time. I think when you get to witness any historical moment for any sport that you love, it's such a big deal for me at least when it happens because you're gonna
yeah.
remember it for the
It's
rest
like
of
you
your
get
life.
goosebumps and stuff.
Yeah, like
Like,
exactly. I got straight chills during the end of
it,
that game. It was insane.
mhm. Yeah, and then as a Warriors fan, you kind of like know what it feels like to watch a
Hmm.
team that's never won anything finally got their first ring. Like you saw that in 2015 when the Warriors got their first win
Oh
after
yeah.
60 years. Like that's I kind of related with Knicks fans. Their team was very easy to root for, and I'm really happy they got the championship.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned like how easy they were to root for. I really think that this is the most likable team the NBA has had in
Yep.
a very almost ever, in my opinion, because we're in the era where social media is a huge thing, and I have a decent amount of followers on Instagram, and I know people that are invested in the NBA for the entire course of the season, and I know people that really aren't. And the number of people that were posting about the Knicks, and I can
Mhm.
tell who isn't a supporter of the NBA and who is. I've never seen an NBA Finals series get this much coverage if it's not related to the Warriors, in my opinion. The
Yeah,
Warriors
in the
obviously
Bay
because we're
Area,
from the Bay
we
Area,
yeah,
but like outside of that, this is the most coverage I've seen a Finals series get, just because everyone was so invested on that Knicks team. The storyline was amazing, especially after the Spurs beat
yeah,
OKC. It was just like the storybook ending for that entire season, in my opinion. I don't think the postseason was that great personally. I thought
yeah.
the finals were great, but the
Mhm.
postseason will be very overrated in my opinion. But it was just so perfect the way how that season ended for the Knicks. Coming back
Yeah,
from being down 13 plus again, Brunson had 45. Like
16-2 in the playoffs. It's a good run
insane.
for them. It's a very good run for them. I feel like it's one of the best, runs of this decade for sure. What would you rank, other finals in the last decade?
In the last decade, it's so 2016. I feel like the Cavs in 16 is still like the most, will have the best like finals run
Like
performance, whatever
aura,
you want to call
yeah.
it. Yeah. And I said, like, I think the Spurs were the second biggest chokers of all time. The 16 Warriors are still my undeniable number one. As a fan, I'm always scarred
Hmm.
by that. It's hard because we were raised watching a dynasty unravel in front of our eyes. So it's hard to be biased
What
because I
would you
think
say from just 2020 on? I feel
from
like
2020
parody, yeah,
on,
the parody era on
I
from the
really
bubble.
like this might be a bold take. I really think this team is number one for me. I don't know.
Yeah, unbiasedly, if I was being biased, I would say the Warriors and then the Knicks.
Mhm.
But unbiased, I would have to put the Knicks. And then another good series I feel like was, Bucks, Suns. That's for me. I feel
Yeah.
like that might be a little bit of a hot take.
No,
But
I think that's the most like underrated final series like of all time, in my opinion. I think this was the best series we've had since the Warriors Celtics in 22. But I even as a Warriors fan, I think that this series was better overall than that Celtics series because there was a couple games where the Warriors blew up Boston and Boston had beaten us by double
yeah.
figures once, but all 5 games of the series were just neck to neck at the final like 5 minutes, and I'm actually bummed I didn't go to 6 or 7 games because it was so fun to watch. And I was working during Game 5. I didn't get to watch the game. I listened
Mhm.
to it when I was closing for the last hour. I had Mike Breen on my right ear just commentating, and I got straight goosebumps just on floor recovery at H&M, hearing Mike Breen
Like
call
our
Game
prediction
2.
our predictions was Knicks in 6. Where'd you go, Lucas?
Oh shoot! What the hell?
But our prediction was Knicks in 6, right? And I was
Yeah, it
thinking
was
that the
Knicks in
whole
6.
time. I was thinking the whole time, yeah, I don't the Spurs. I think the Spurs get away with this one, and then slowly but surely, Jalen Brunson 40-point game. just keeping the team in the game, and it played out like all four of their wins in that series. And then the fifth game that the Spurs won it was a close game too.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. All right, so now we're continuing with the topic of basketball, but we're going to move on from the finals back locally to the Bay Area with the Warriors. Now, draft's a week away. I think this is the most important draft the Warriors have had since 2020, in my opinion, with James
Yep.
Wiseman. We all know how that pick went down. But the Warriors finally have a lottery pick for the first time in ages. I really haven't done much research, so I'm going to toss it back to you on what do you want this team to do? Because we're in the midst of Curry's last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
We need the future as well, but they want to win now. What's going through your head on what the Warriors need to do in this draft?
This is the first lottery pick of the Mike Dunleavy era. To be honest, he's been a decent drafter. If you look at what he's had and what he's gotten out of it, he's had his only first round pick was Brandon Przemski, 20th pick in the draft. Whatever you say, like we haven't talked about my Pods take, but
Yes.
if you if you redraft that draft, he gets drafted higher than 20.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what
Yeah.
he's a goofy player. He has his deficiencies, but he's a good player. He's a good backup point guard. I don't think he's a superstar by any means, but he's a good backup point guard. But and they've worked out. You know, they have the 11th pick. They've worked out players like Yaxel Linderborg from Michigan, Brandon Burries, Ade Mara, and then Kareem Lopez too. And I feel like with this, the state of the Warriors is more of they need everybody. They're old. Their only good players are old, and then the young players are kind of still developing. They're like, they've had like the two timeline thing going this whole decade it seems, and I just think the Warriors need to hit on this draft if they want anything, positive for Steph Curry the rest of his career. Steve Kerr coming back, Draymond has 1 year left. It's, player option this summer. So if you're gonna, bring the band back together, I feel like you need some fresh blood that's actually gonna contribute. And I feel like this draft is a good way to do it, unless want to go in free agency. If LeBron opts out, go get him. Go trade for Giannis. But I feel like this is the most, drafting a good player here is like the most natural way to, get back in contention in a way.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is probably one of the more important drafts the Warriors have had in the last decade or so, just because, like, yeah, Dunleavy and this front office, they're still trying to go and kind of make a win now move type of thing. But I think that this draft pick alone is so important. I was kind of hoping that we'd move up in the lottery, but we kind of stayed put. What pick are we? Is it 12 or
Nor
13?
11th.
11, right. So still having the 11th pick in a very, very stacked draft class too, I think is really, really crucial. And I think that this is an important one too, because who knows if Dunleavy will be the guy in charge in the next 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it is. But this is his first legitimate shot on how can he draft a player almost damn near the top 10. And
Yep.
the harsh reality is once Steph and Draymond and Steve Kerr go, this team's going to suck for 5-10 years. So we're going to have a lot of lottery picks in the 2030s. And I think that this is a good start on how Mike Dunleavy will do and how will the Warriors assess him as a general manager who can draft players. I agree. I think that him drafting Pods was a good pick. I have my doubts on Dunleavy. I defended him for a long time. I've said that for a while now. I've kind of lost that faith in him, but I do think that he is a good person that can go draft good players for the Warriors. And I think that it's hard to mess up in this draft in my position because the Warriors, like, if we draft a guard, Warriors fans are gonna be pissed off because there's all this like thing about how we need a center and we need length, which I agree. I would love to see the Warriors get some length in this draft, but like our guard play is not fantastic right now. You have Steph and Pods, and that's about it. So even if we get Braden Burris, who I'm huge on,
You
I'd be
saw him
thrilled
at
about
March
it.
Madness.
Yeah, Burris was amazing in March Madness, and he's
Yes.
so young. I like you want to get a player who can make an impact sooner than later if you want to win now. But this is someone that you might look into building a whole team around in the future. Even as the 11th pick, though Steph is going to retire in at most 3 years, in my opinion. So this guy
Mhm.
is going to be on the team hopefully at that point in time. I think it's really, really important to have someone who can make the impact now, but can also really be a big stepping stone for the next chapter of the Warriors franchise.
Yeah, I think, the Warriors, which this offseason has been like a change of mindset. The big thing with Steve Kerr coming back was he didn't want to keep, trying to win a championship with talent that's not even worthy of winning a championship.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like their Warriors are taking a step back. Him, Mike Dunleavy, the whole Joe Lake of everybody, they're taking a step back and kind of just going for development of player and trying to develop the team into something that just continuously progressive. Because I feel like the last 3 years the Warriors have been in the same place. Playing
Mm-hmm.
team eighth seed team get knocked out in the first round, second round. It's and I feel like it is a breath of fresh air in a way. Finally, admitting it's not having this delusion like, oh, we're gonna go win a championship because we have Steph Curry. That doesn't work anymore. The teams now like OKC, the Spurs, the Knicks, who we just talked about, have depth. And this Warriors team, if they're old, and their talent's not going to play every night. Jimmy Butler's not going to play every night. He's hurt. Steph Curry's not going to play every night. Porzingis, if they bring him back, he's not going to play every night. Draymond's not going to play every night. So you need guys that are consistent, can play for when those guys are out, and that's what's interesting about this team. It's managing the talent.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you mentioned about how the last like 3 seasons for the Warriors has kind of just been like this fine line of just being mediocre, staying around 500, and I really think as a fan who's seen so much success from this team, it's been almost torturous to see the Warriors be stuck at 500 because the
Yep.
issue about it is you know that you're not going to get far, but you're not getting any benefit out of it. And I know that we still have all of these core guys from our dynasty ages, but I I'm either hoping that the Warriors kind of take a step back because you're not going to succeed in the future unless you start to lose, in my
Yeah, I think
opinion.
that I think that's what this offseason is. Take a step back to take 2 steps forward in a way.
Yeah, I agree. It's either gonna be that or the Warriors go get LeBron. It's gonna be one or the other.
Yeah, and if you get LeBron, I feel like you got to get an older guy like the actual Linderborg. I feel like his
Hmm.
upside isn't that high, but if a play in, fill in type of player, plug and play, that's your guy. But then if you, like you mentioned, you can go get a guy like Brendan Burris, might need to be developed a year or two, but and then you just let him play because this team has room to just let players play. I don't care what
Hmm.
you say about Steph Curry, but you kind of need to develop towards the future, in a way.
Oh, 100%. I think this pick alone, because like we saying that the Warriors are going to take a step back this offseason, I think that this draft pick will really tell us
Mm-hmm.
that step moving forward. Because I think if you get someone like Yaxel, he's an older dude. He had a lot more experience in the college times. I think he played
Yeah,
for 5 years. I think, right?
yep, 5 year player.
Yeah.
He's
So I think if we
what,
get Yaxel,
23?
if yeah, 23 is pretty crazy for
Look,
the modern day for a draft. But I think if we get a guy like Axel, it maybe might stand out as a more win now guy. You want someone that can make an impact almost
yep.
immediately rather than a developmental guy. And I'm honestly okay with that. And I would support it, honestly, because when is the last time we've seen the Warriors develop a guy from the draft? We tried with
Like,
Wiseman, we tried with Kaminga. It hasn't worked out for us. So I don't know.
I mean, but you could also say like was like Paz was a plug and play player. I feel like his
Mm-hmm.
ceiling was never that high. But then you can also say Quentin Post. He's been an okay player from what he was taking. Will Richards, like they get these guys in the second round and they hit on them. Guy Santos,
Mm-hmm.
like they can do that, and that's mostly been Mike Dunleavy. And I feel like that's what gives Warriors fans hope when you think about this draft is maybe Mike Dunleavy can bring some of that success into the first round.
Yeah, I think that we've done a good job with day two guys. I think my only issue about it is they have moments where they step up and they have a nice role for a handful of games,
Yep.
but I haven't seen someone that can consistently be a part of the team full on. Even like with like Quentin Post, like he's had some really good stretches, but there will be like a 2 month span where we won't even see him step on the court whatsoever. Same with Will Richards. So I just want to see someone that can
And
really
that's
get consistent minutes. I think that's so
and
important for
I
me.
feel like that's more of the disconnect between what we heard about this offseason with Mike
Mhm.
Dunleavy and Steve Kerr. Mike will probably draft a guy, and then Steve Kerr just like, oh, he's not good enough to play, and just let him sit on right on the bench all season long. And but that's not. I feel like that's what went into this decision of Steve Kerr coming back. It's like they probably have made him realize that this team isn't going anywhere unless you develop your young talent.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Warriors should take notes from what the Giants are doing with Bryce Eldridge right now because it's been a few weeks of Eldridge stepping up, but he's been fantastic, and that's just because the Giants have just been letting him play. They haven't been very good. And he's playing almost every day now, and he's been growing, and he's been fantastic. And I think that's what the Warriors need to do. And that was the problem with especially Kaminga was that it was so inconsistent on the number of minutes that Kerr would give him. And I understood because Kaminga was also an inconsistent player as well. But if you really want a future guy that can carry the Warriors in the next decade or so, it needs to be way, way, way more consistent, in my opinion. Like, you have to be
And
giving these guys 15, 20 minutes, even if they're not having the best performances and maybe you're 500. The Warriors are not going to go anywhere unless you start developing guys to their full potential. And I feel like the Warriors have really lacked doing that in the last couple of years.
And the 11th pick is a good pick.
Mm-hmm.
SGA is the 11th pick. Clay Thompson's the 11th pick in the draft. So you can get a franchise, changing, altering player with the 11th pick if you do it right.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I mean, Steph was picked, what, 7 or 8?
7, yeah, 7.
Clay was pick 11. Like it's shown that you can really strike gold on some of these guys, even if it's not a top 5 draft pick. And I'm hoping that's the case for the Warriors because right now I don't really have a lot of hope as a fan per se, even though we've been to play in a bunch of times and we've still made the playoffs. Like we know that the Warriors are not even close to winning a championship, and they need to start taking notes from these contenders. Is that they built from the bottom up, got a bunch of really young, talented players, and now in just a span of what 2, 3 years, they're contending for a championship now. The Thunder had done
Yeah.
that very well. The Spurs did that. The Rockets had done it too. They were not great as of late, but I think that the Warriors need to start taking notes for that, and I'm hoping that's the case down the road.
And then I was listening to a little bit of Mike Dunleavy's press conference today, and he was like, we don't really, we're not going to discriminate with this pick. They feel like they need positions at they need somebody at every
Mm-hmm.
position, and that was very refreshing because I feel like they're genuinely going to try to get the best player available from their perspective, and let's see how that goes.
I just hope they don't really reach for a player. That's my only concern is that sometimes it does pay off, but I feel like with a draft class so talented like this, it's better to be safe than sorry, in my opinion. My camera cut out again. I don't know why, but yeah, I think that it's really important that the Warriors, you know, look. You go ahead.
Okay, that's a
My
different
camera's being
angle.
weird right now.
This is a different
you,
Lucas angle.
I know. Here, I can carry it. You can carry it forward.
But yeah, I just think when you think about this draft class is for the last couple of years now has been touted as one of the best draft classes in NBA history, and the Warriors getting a lottery pick was a blessing. They were trying to get that first round pick that no, they were trying to get inside the playoffs, and they were going to lose in the first round. They were going to discontinue the cycle of whatever they've been doing the last few years. But the lottery pick might be a step in the right direction for when we look back at it.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. You keep on going. I'm having some technical difficulties here, but I agree. I think this is such an important draft for the Warriors. I'm excited to see where it goes. It's gonna either give me some faith that the Warriors know what they're doing for the future, or it might be the complete opposite. But only time can tell. Because even if we reach on a guy, they might be the next All Star, the next Curry, for all we know. So you never know.
And then what do you think, if they get a young, guy like maybe a Braden Burrs, 18, 19 years old, what do you think that means for the expectations of the team?
I think it means that they're more looking into the next couple of years rather than right now. I think it's a huge role for Kerr to take on. I think it'll be one of the most pressure that he'll have in his time as a head
I
coach.
think I think if they go a young guy, it's going to be Braden Burns. Just
Mm-hmm.
because of the Arizona connection, we were at that game at SAP Center. Steve Kerr was sitting
Yep.
courtside. He's a big Arizona. He went to Arizona. He's a big Arizona fan still. So I think if they go young guy, it's going to be Braden Burns.
Yeah, and I'd be all in on that because I think Braden Burries can really get some solid mentorship out of Steph Curry. And we saw spurts where Burries can take over a game at such a young age. And even as crazy as it sounds, if the Warriors got him, he can be the next Curry. He can be the guy that everyone has a jersey
Yep.
for in the Bay Area if he gets developed the right way. And I actually do think that if you're going to get an 18 or 19-year-old, Burries is the guy because the lineage of Arizona is great. You're learning from the greatest shooter of all time. Like I think that could be really beneficial off Burries, and I would be thrilled if we got him because I was so big on him during the March Madness
Yeah,
tournament.
he reminds me a lot of Jared McCain. A
Mm-hmm.
few years ago, I remember the Warriors were kind of in on him, but then they passed, and I thought he would have been perfect in the system. This shooter,
Mm-hmm.
plays a little bit like Steph does off the ball. And I think if you go get, him, it's not a bad pick, but he'll just have to play behind Steph, and that's, not bad.
Yep. Okay. I'm gonna quit, and I'm just gonna do this for this
Yeah,
episode
but
because it is
we're
being
not
annoying.
going we're not going to get HG Lucas.
Yeah, it's all good. I think are we good to toss it to the next segment?
Yeah, I think we're good
So
on the Warriors. Hopefully they get a good draft pick. Well, this time next week we will know. It's next Tuesday the draft.
yeah, I'm excited to see it. It's gonna be such a talented class, and I'm really looking forward to what the next future or the next chapter of the NBA is going to look like because it's sure as hell been a lot of fun as of late. We're going to toss back up to the World Cup. That was mainly our second episode with Mr. Ethan and Dachi. We are officially exactly a week into the tournament,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I don't know what to say. I have been surprised on how amazing this tournament has been the first week. Dare I say, I think this is the best first week the World Cup has had
Yeah.
ever, in my opinion.
I feel like this World Cup's giving me a little March Madness, just on the global
Mm-hmm.
scales vibes. Just like this first round, there's games on
Yep.
all the time. I can always tune into something. And all the games have been, today's the last day where everybody's going to be playing. And then the cycle repeats tomorrow. We're filming this on Wednesday. And, and the games have been, haven't been blowouts. We talked about last week, maybe since they're expanding to 48, there's gonna be a couple blowouts. There hasn't been any blowouts for the most part.
No, yeah, I agree. I think there was two things that I was really worried about this tournament. One was the U.S. on how were they going to do hosting it, and I think as closer we got to the World Cup, the more I realized that we have so
have you
much culture
have you
in this
seen
country.
have you seen the TikToks of like the people from around the world just coming and trying, going to Walmart, trying our
Yeah,
junk food. It's crazy.
it's really cool to see. This is like why I love the World Cup so much. Even if I'm not the most avid soccer fan in the world, this is the closest you'll ever see the world peace. Is when the World Cup
Hmm.
happens. This is when everyone kind of comes together, respects one another in some sort of aspect. There's still been a lot of things going on around FIFA and the US hosting it, but like outside of that, it's so fun to watch. I mean, it's been really cool to see the people of Scotland take over the city of Boston
Yeah,
and going to a Red Sox game and
and
singing a
they
song in the seventh inning for how long? Like it's just really cool to see.
they drunk Boston out of beer. Did you see
Yeah,
that?
they sure did.
Yeah, what did you think about the USA's performance on Thursday,
Um,
last Thursday?
I'm surprised. I'm very surprised to say the least. And I think that this is the testament of or what people thought this USA men's team can be for the last 8 years. I think Thursday against Paraguay was the first time we fully saw it. Am I fully convinced yet? Not necessarily, just because I don't think Paraguay is like the highest quality of teams, and I
Mm,
really don't think the U.S. will have. I know they're still like a CONCACAF
they're
team,
mid. They're mid
yeah, so
level
like for the
team.
US, it's really good to beat a mid-level team with that dominant fashion. But if you're trying to get to a quarterfinals appearance, which with how that team looked on Thursday, they can possibly do it. I think that their real test will come in the round of 32. I think that it's given they're going to make it through there. They have a pretty easy group. I'm excited about Friday against Australia
Yeah,
because Australia stunned Turkey, which was really unexpected.
yeah.
But yeah, I think this is the first time that we've seen the team collectively play great as a whole, and they were just dominant in that first half. I really think that's one of the most dominant halves I've seen from any soccer team that I've watched in my life, especially for the U.S. team. That was by far the most dominant half I've seen.
Yeah, just over the last couple of years, we've always kind of seen the USA have talent, overseas, but they've never really put it together as a team, And last Friday was the first time we saw it, put them together. They looked like a team, and I feel like that goes to not having an American manager.
Mm-hmm.
Mauricio Pochettino, he that's not American style of soccer. That was something like Ethan Ndachi. I texted him. He was like, "Yeah, they're playing like 2011 Barcelona as a joke," but like it looked like it for a little bit, against that matchup. And I'm interested to see how far they go into this tournament. And it seems like they're playing with a lot of pride with the
Mm-hmm.
tournament in their home state.
No, definitely. And I think that it makes me happy to see that because when you're the host nation for World Cup, I think that you have this much higher expectation from your country, especially. Like, hey, you're the guys hosting this tournament after this is the biggest stage on planet Earth. How are you guys going to perform collectively to represent our nation? And I think outside of Qatar in 2022, most host nations do a really good job. Even Russia made it to the quarters in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the U.S. did a fantastic job saying, we're going to represent you guys in the right way possible, in the best way possible. And it showed properly because that's the most dominant World Cup win I've seen the U.S. team have in my life personally.
Yeah, they scored 4 goals. The first time in World Cup history that the U.S. men's national team has scored 4 goals in a
Wow.
game. So
I did not know that.
yeah, it's the first that was like their most dominant win in World Cup history. So it was a great win. Did you happen to see Messi last night?
I was at Pacifica, but I am chronically always online on the internet 24/7. So I am always in touch with sports, no matter where I'm at and what time it is. It's just impressive to watch. And honestly, sure, Zidane, which I didn't know Zidane's son was the Algerian
Yeah.
goalkeeper. I really think that just shows to how incredible Messi is as a player, and I really like. I'm sick and tired of hearing these GOAT debates behind who is better. Is Messi better than Ronaldo and whatnot? I don't think it's a debate anymore. I really don't think Messi's going to turn 39 next week, and he just got his first ever hat trick in the World Cup. While Ronaldo, like again, Ronaldo, he
He's
doesn't have as big of a role with Portugal, and they just drew 1-1 to Congo. Like I'm gonna go off that spew for a little bit, but he's just insane. Like it's just impressive to see how dominant he's performing at such old of an age. And I had my doubts on Argentina because I thought they were a worse team in terms of quality than they were in 2022, and I thought that they weren't gonna match that same level. But first game, it looks like they still have it, and I think someone mentioned like the power of friendship is so strong for Argentina.
Yeah, because these guys like when they're on their clubs, it's just like they're all right. Some of them are
Mm-hmm.
underperforming. I see that with Endo Fernandez as a Chelsea fan. He just underperforms like hell. With Chelsea, but when he comes back up to the national team, they have a sense of pride. I feel like Messi's like the big leader in that.
Mm-hmm.
He's about to if he scores another goal, he's going to be leader in World Cup goals. So you got to respect the greatness.
Yeah, got to respect the greatness and got to respect the defending champs too. I think there's been there. I think through 7 days, there's been teams who have matched their expectation in terms of like the top of the
Hmm.
table. I think France, who had a really rough first half against Senegal, they did a great job in the second half. They looked like classic France soccer.
Hmm.
Um, England, they were amazing today. I like even someone as a fake bandwagon England supporter, they surprised me. Like 4
Mhm.
2, 20 shots. I really think Southgate was holding this team back for its full potential, and their new manager did a fantastic job with their lineup. They looked great outside of a couple miscues on defense. But Spain, not the case. They drew to Cape Verde, which is will go down as one of the greatest upsets in sports, in my opinion. I think it'll be one of the most. It'll be the most iconic draw
Yeah,
in World Cup history.
it was.
Portugal's
I
draw
did
was disappointing. Like, I don't know.
the
There's
the video of Cape Verde, their fans reacting, just cheering because they tied against a powerhouse, or global powerhouse.
yeah, the favorites too, and I, it's hard because it's one game. I'm kind of holding Spain back a little bit. Maybe I don't know if they're my favorites anymore, just
I don't
because
know.
they drew against
They
Cape
they they
Verde.
came into this game. Lamine Yamal only played a half. I think they kind of thought they had it in the bag, and they tried to
Hmm.
rest a couple of players, and I feel like that's what bit them in the ass.
No, I agree with that. And I think that second set of games is always super important, especially for those powerhouse teams that either draw or lose, on how are they going to respond the second game around. Because I really think that's when their World Cup run
Yeah,
turns around. Argentina is like the prime example of it in 2022 when Messi scored against Mexico, I think during that second half. That's when that tournament turned around for Argentina completely, and they never looked back from there. And while this is not a loss on the stat sheet for Spain, I think it still is for them in general. I thought they were going to win 10-0. Like, if I'm being completely honest, I don't know anything about Cape Verde. They're a tiny little island in the middle of nowhere. I for sure thought Spain were going to manhandle them. And the fact that you couldn't score against them or get 3 points out of them in general, I think just is either going to raise the bar for them to play a little bit more aggressively in the rest of the tournament. But it's a little bit of a warning signal too. Like, you got to take it more seriously because even though it's expanded to 48 teams, all these teams are for real, and we haven't really seen any of these teams outside of Curacao who lost 7-1. Every other game has been very very tight and hasn't been like super one sided.
I think I'm kind of I feel like I'm buying a little stock on Norway a bit because I feel like I didn't know how. Like I feel like all their players are built how Holland is. Like everybody's like
Yeah,
6'5", they can just head the ball, and I feel like all their goals, like I saw yesterday, were just straight headers, and they just were inside the box. It was a beautiful game.
yeah, they look aggressive, and I think that's what I'm super excited about this tournament for the rest of the road down is that there's been a large handful of teams that have been really, really good and can be dark horses. I think I give a huge pat on the back for these AFCON teams. While not all of them have won, a lot of these teams have done a great job just in their first World Cup game. I think Egypt deserves a huge pat on their back getting a point against Belgium. They controlled that game for about 55 to 60 minutes of it. Saudi Arabia drew against Uruguay. They got manhandled in that second half. It wasn't even close, but to still get a point against a good team like Uruguay is still really, really
Yep.
impressive. Senegal, they eventually got ran out of the stadium by France, but they had a really good quality 55 to 60 minutes against France as well. And Morocco drew against Brazil, which did not surprise me. I think the AFCON teams, and I said this before, I think they're going to take the next step forward. And I think that they're going to have a more successful run than the South American teams right now.
Yeah, yeah, the African teams and then also the Asian teams have been, the
Mm-hmm.
biggest surprise. Well, the Asian teams haven't played as much comp as the Africans, teams
Yeah,
have, but like South Korea, Japan, but they've performed when they had to play, like Mexico. Did South Korea? Who did South
South
Korea
Korea
play
beat
Mexico?
Czechia.
Okay, yeah, which is like you're handling business, and then who did Japan play? I know it was a
They
good
play
game.
Netherlands. I think having them draw against Netherlands, who's
Yeah,
a
it's a
good quality
powerhouse.
European team, and I was pretty confident that Japan was going to have another successful run at it at the World Cup because I looked back a few days ago on their table in 2022, they had Spain and Germany and they topped that
Mm.
group, which is just insane to even think about. I think they had the chance of doing it again, especially after getting a point against the Netherlands. So I think South Korea and Japan, they were on my radar already, so I think it's not as much of a surprise for me per se. But I think the bigger surprise was Japan still managing to get a point against the Netherlands on a 2-2 draw, especially. They still got it in them. I think that they can even be better in this tournament than they were in 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested to see USA play this week. What other games do you have off the top of your head that you're looking for? What other teams are you looking forward to? to see.
Off the dome of my head, I don't necessarily know like what the next like couple days are for matchup wise, but in terms of teams, like you said, I have an eye on Norway. I'm curious if they're going to continue that
Hmm.
dominant success they had against Iraq. I'm very curious on how Morocco is going to do. I think Morocco has a
Yep,
chance to make it their semifinals run. I think the U.S. game against Australia will be very interesting because Pulisic
very
is day to
telling.
day right now. We don't even know if he's going to play or not. I think the European teams, I'm really interested in how they're going to do for the rest of the way there because Portugal and Spain, at least, they didn't look great. I've
They
been
look
kind of let
underwhelming.
down. Yeah, I feel like the European teams as a whole have been a little bit more underwhelming as I thought they were initially. So I'm curious how they're going to turn it around. I know, but even Belgium too, they look so bad the first hour until they put Lukaku in, and he scores a goal for the 25 seconds, and which is like the funniest thing to happen all tournament.
Yeah,
But I'm just curious on are these European powerhouses going to continue to let me down? And are we going to see these small nations of AFCON or Asia or whatever it is? Are they going to continue to surprise people? Because it's a round of 32. We can seriously see Cape Verde or Congo make the round of 32.
yep.
At this rate, like getting a point against Spain and Portugal, the rest of their group is not as deceiving as those two teams. So I'm just very interested to see, are we going to have a March Madness-esque tournament where we're going to see some really random countries get far in this tournament? If there's any time for it to happen, it's going to be this year because there's a
Yeah,
lot of teams that are surprising many people.
yeah, I totally agree. I'm interested to see on how these teams, the dark horses of the tournament, but also the top dogs, living up to expectations. Like we saw Argentina live up to the expectations, but we also seen Brazil look underwhelming at times.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
the Brazil game, I thought they got lucky getting away with the tie in that game. To be honest, I thought Morocco was the better team all the way through. I think Vinny Jr. just had a spectacular moment.
Yeah, I was so mad. I had work that day and I complained this I think to my friends and my family. You had Brazil Morocco going on and game 5 of the NBA finals and I was
That was
shit-faced
such
that
a
day.
bro. Bro, this last weekend in sports was so legendary, bro.
It, it's
Like it
it's
was
generally
something to
been
watch.
it's been such a good run for sports. I know that we don't talk about hockey on this channel or on
Yeah.
this podcast much, but I love
Yep.
hockey. And that Stanley Cup final, again, I didn't really watch game 6 because I was at work, but that series was fantastic. And so was the NBA finals, and we got spoiled the World Cup this year. So I totally agree. It's been such a great last 2 weeks for sports. I am so thankful the World Cup is this summer because I don't think I'd be able to mentally contain myself to just watch the Giants play for 2 months straight without anything else going on. So I'm very thankful the World Cup lets off
But
some leverage for me for that just
let's
for a
let's
month.
end let's end this podcast with your Giants rim. How do you feel about them putting like half the roster on the trade block?
It's honestly, it's honestly like it's so hard to put into words. It happens every single time where I talk about this. If you look at the Giants statistically on offense, we've been really good.
Yep.
We're like top 10 in a lot of categories. So for one sense, now I'm like, okay, this team is actually not terrible, and we can win games if we had a more competent bullpen and pitching staff. So I get why they're going to put these guys on the block. It makes sense. The Giants are not close to making the playoffs and whatnot. Maybe this is not going to work out. But at the same time, I really think if we had a good pitching staff, this team would be good. Like, I'm going to be dead serious. We started really poorly in the first 2 months of the season, but as soon as our bats got going, they've been so much more enjoyable to watch. They still have their moments here and there where they stink, but I like it. It kind of sucks to see now because Rafi's starting to come up. Arias has been amazing. I don't want Arias to leave the Giants. I'll be devastated if he leaves us halfway through the season because he's been so fun to watch. Jung Lee has been amazing
Yeah.
as of late. Adamas has been a little bit better. Eldridge has been fantastic. This team is not like I don't like
Like there's
roll
talent.
over watching them
There's
play. Yeah, there's plenty of
yep.
talent.
Hmm.
So I get if you want to get guys on the trade block, maybe this is not the right thing to work out. But at the same time, why don't maybe you go get some guys from the bullpen who can have a bigger impact and role than our crappy bullpen that we have right now? Because I guarantee you that if we give Logan Webb a little bit more help and if we have a better rotation too, because I think Robbie Ray has stunk this season and Roop has been really bad as of late. If you can bring more quality pitchers to San Francisco, I think this team can make a run in the last second. It's crazy the turnaround I've had on this team because I gave up on them like less than a month ago. But I kind of have a different point of view now because the offense has been great. The pitching's holding us back right now, believe it or not.
Yeah, since this episode's kind of been all over the place. We talked about soccer, we talked about basketball, talking
My
about
camera's
baseball.
been going on and off like 5 different times. This has been a
I think
freaking
I think
mess
it's
of an
time for my
episode.
Brandon Ayuk rant.
Yep.
I've been holding in for the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
Brandon Ayuk, you're an interesting guy. You you didn't show up to your workouts, right? Let's talk about like where it's all started, right? You didn't show up to your rehab after you tore your ACL. You didn't show up to the facility knowing you were on thin ice with the team. They voided your money. They didn't pay you, right? They didn't pay you. You're not getting paid to play football. Cool. Sit there. Just do nothing. He didn't complain to NFL Players Association. He didn't do anything with that, you know what I mean? He just didn't talk all season long. And then this month he's been on Instagram, social media, spree. The 49ers do have blame. Kyle Shanahan, their relationship, terrible. John Lynch, terrible. But when you lose, you take that much money away from a guy, right? It's understandable why he's mad, but at the same time, the way he's going about it is so unprofessional. As an athlete, you should not be moving away. Like he's going on social media talking about, oh, they don't want me. They don't want me video.
It's so funny. It's comedic to an
like
extent. Even as a non 49ers fan, it's hilarious to see.
like dude, you're just like, oh, they don't want to release me because they know I'm gonna they know I'm gonna ball somewhere else, which is probably true. Which is like I understand, like everything he's saying is true in a sense. Like if you think about it, it's true. But he could go about it. I feel like if he go about it a different way, he probably would have went off the team. If he showed he's healthy, they would have traded him. They would have got something off from him.
Mm-hmm.
But he just wants to go with his buddy Jaden Daniels, the fucking Commanders, to win like 9 games this season. It doesn't make any sense. Like if you show you're healthy, like he hasn't shown he's healthy since like this week when he posted he was ripped 210 pounds. But like he's not helping the Niners out. Like he doesn't want to be a Niner. Cool, help them go somewhere else. But we can't get trade value for you. We're not going to just release you when you were a top 10 wide receiver when the last time you played. We're just not going to release you. That's bad business, And I think he just wants it his way or it's the highway, which has been interesting. And I'm kind of sick of Brandon Ayuk. He was one of my favorite players in the Niners at that point. 2023, his legendary catch against the Lions, sparked that comeback in the NFC Championship. And that's my rant for the day.
I think my thing about the Ayuk, this whole situation, not only is he hurting the Niners in terms of his trade value, he's hurting his career on a severe level. And I really want a like scientific researcher out there. If anyone's watching this and you're a legitimate researcher, please do research on what the hell is going on with NFL wide receivers, because there's been way too many sequences as of late where we see these. You had Antonio Brown, I had Brandon Ayuk, Rashee Rice is freaking crazy. What is it with NFL wide receivers with these like insane egos and these CTE like mindsets?
I don't even think it's CTE, bro. It's his ego. That's like they think everything revolves around them. Like, dog, you were a top 10 wide receiver. Cool. But it should not be the 49ers' main priority to send you to somewhere you want to be. They just want a draft pick. They want a good player out of you. It's releasing you is just gonna hurt them in a better way. You know what I mean? It's gonna hurt them. It's gonna make your life great, but it's not. He doesn't understand the two-way street. I feel like.
No, yeah, I agree, and he's still a very young and talented player, but just seeing how things have unraveled as of late, I think his career might be over, to be honest with you.
If he doesn't go to the Commanders, I don't think anybody else is going to want him, just because of the connection he has with Jaden Daniels. That's literally keeping him in the NFL.
Yeah, I just think like it's just such bad PR. One thing we always talk about PR here. It's just God,
Like,
awful PR,
like,
man. No one's gonna
like,
want him if he keeps
what
acting
is
like this.
what are you helping posting these videos? Like, he deleted them, but like, what are you helping? Like, it's ridiculous.
He's helping no one, and I really think Antonio Brown was the only person in the universe that could get away with such monstrosities that he did because he was so talented during that time. He was probably like one of the best, if not the best receiver in the league a year before all of his antics went down. But even that, he was with the Pats for one game, got cut. He was with the Bucks, got a Super Bowl with them, cool, but he never really got back to that same level, and that's just because no one trusted him, and he just lost his freaking mind. And I think maybe Ayuk, he's not at the same level as AB was a few years ago, but man, if he keeps on acting like this, there's not going to be anybody in the NFL that's going to want you. And if he keeps this up, and I really think this is going to happen, he's going to be out of the league in 2 years. As
Yeah,
sad as it is, because he's such a talented player, he's literally ruined his career.
it's okay to not like your employer, but I sometimes I don't like my employer, but I'm not going to go crash out on them.
Yeah,
That's not
exactly.
helping anybody.
No, you're so spot on that. But
Let's
it's crazy. What a time we live in right now.
what it's This is a five sports HQ episode, man. Look at us, man.
5 Spurs, a new record.
New
We should get
record.
like a little we should get a little banner like up top here. This is 5 Sports for episode 3. Also, first episode with that's over an hour long that no one's gonna watch any longer than 5 minutes for, and I should edit so we can get more clout and attention. But I think that's all we got. I think the last thing I'll say is rest in peace, Alden Smith. It's always sad to see a talented
Rip.
player or any athlete die at such a young of age, and it's even as a non 49ers fan, it just is always brutal to see that. It's
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
Alden was one of the he had the greatest start of any defensive player. First, better than Miles Garrett and better than TJ Watt. Like, he started his career with first 2 seasons, 28 sacks in 2 seasons.
Wow.
In a season with 15 games still, you know what I mean? He had the potential to be one of the greatest of all time. It just sucks to see, how his mental health turned, and, praying for the family.
Yeah, my condolences go to his family. I pray for them. I hope that they can recover from this because it is not easy to lose a loved one like that. I think that's pretty much all we've got on this episode, though. As always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to follow us on all of our platforms on social media. Make sure to subscribe for us and hit the bell notification. I have not said that
Yeah.
this time yet. To keep an eye out on future episodes. I'm going to be on vacation. Mr. Quick will be going to Disneyland for a few days. So I don't know if I'll be able to film next week,
Mr. Quick's
but
gonna post a couple videos from Disneyland.
we'll see. We'll see. I know Hattie's been waiting for a quick crew video. I need to charge my digicam, but until next time, whenever that is, thank you guys for watching, and we will see
Shout,
you next time.
shout out the Quick Crew.
Yes, sir.